You either use the internet for fun or you use the internet to grow. You're here to grow. Welcome to TRS Clips. I want to ask you, one, if you could explain the word prana, because it's present in every single ancient culture. And two, is spiritual growth the same as an increase of prana? So when we talk about Kriya Yoga and autobiography of a yogi, where they say, oh, you grow spiritually, you grow very quickly from a spiritual perspective. You're basically opening up your body to receive more life force, right? Is that the right kind of thinking?
You definitely want to open up your body to receive more of the life force. But just because you receive more of the life force does not necessarily mean you will become more spiritual.
Okay. Now let's talk about what life force is, and then you can expand this.
Okay. And of course, with words, it's kind of difficult to experience what the life force is. But think about the life force as this. We have a sperm and an ovum. They come together. They form one cell called a zygote. From that one cell, you and I are made up of, 10 trillion human cells plus another 10 trillion bacteria and rickettsia and archaea and so on. So there's trillions and trillions of cells. And then, of course, each one of us is interacting with other human beings and with plants and animals and so on. So a tremendous complexity is being generated out of this one cell. So prana is what is driving that projection of awareness into this physical world. And so we're alive because there is this life force, the prana, that is circulating inside us, keeping the body and the mind and the spirit together.
Electricity?
Well, electricity is part of it, but it's much more subtle than electricity. One way to think about it, and don't take this analogy too far, is you have a magnet. You have a piece of paper, and you have some iron filings on the top. You move the magnet, the iron filings will move. It's not a physical thing because the paper is in between, but it is a force. So prana is more subtle than physical reality and less subtle than the mind. It's in between the body and the mind, but it's keeping them together because without that, living individuals would not occur. So prana, everything in the world has an agenda.
Okay. Is it fair to say that modern society takes you away from allowing the maximum amount of prana to flow through your body, mind, and soul?
I think it is very fair to say that because there's good quality prana and there's not so good quality prana. We're all alive because there's prana. If you do not get enough prana, you will die. We're getting prana basically two ways. We're getting prana by breathing. Immediately we get prana, and we get prana by eating. And it's said in Ayurveda that the prana is absorbed from the large intestine. And of course, the breath is absorbed through the lungs. So oxygen is sort of like the vehicle for prana. Oxygen and prana are two different. Oxygen is very dense. Prana is less dense, but they're associated together. And the lungs and the large intestine are associated together. And they are in Chinese medicine as well, because they're both involved with taking prana from the environment into the organism. But you take it in, then you have to do something with it. So this is, again, where Ayurveda is, the basic principles of Ayurveda. If only people knew them, this would be a very useful thing. When you take the prana in, it is providing you life force. And that life force will either promote more life force, and that will happen if you are circulating the energy well, or it will turn into what we in Ayurveda call vata. And vata means nervous energy. So you'll have energy, but you won't be able to store it. You won't know what to do with it. So you will you will get jittery, and you will talk a lot, and you will look at your social media, and you will wander around looking for things to involve yourself in because you have all this energy and you feel like you have to do something, but you don't know what you should do. And so we're getting energy, we're getting prana all the time. Otherwise, we wouldn't be alive. We're breathing it. But if you're in a big city, you're breathing air that has a bunch of pollution in it. But it's not just the physical pollution. You're breathing in the prana of everybody around you. And these are people who are not necessarily spiritual. And what they're thinking about is, how can I make more money? How can I seduce so-and-so over there? How can I become a big dada? Or how can I become an important politician? Or how can I become famous? Or people are focusing on that, and their thoughts are going out into the environment. So you're breathing in that stuff too. And this is why it is so desirable, if you at all can, get out of the city at least occasionally. Go to some place where there is pure air, pure water, and just allow yourself to turn off the phone and just allow yourself to connect to reality. That's the reality. What we're in the city is not reality. I mean, it is real, but it's not sustainable reality. So, and then we have the question of food. So originally you were getting food directly from the ground, and and there was nice prana, and there was no particular pollution. Now the food is polluted, but it's not just the physical pollution. It's the pollution of the people who are growing it, but they're doing it for money, and the people who are cooking it, but they're doing it for money. And the people who are thinking, whatever it is, Vimalananda always preferred to cook his own food, and he was a great cook. And he said, one of the reasons I prefer to cook my own food is because other people, when they cook, their thoughts are going into the food, and unless their thoughts are uplifting thoughts, it's going to affect my awareness also. So here we are, and you're in a hurry, and I understand this. You're in a hurry. You're going to get the vada pav from somewhere, and you have time just enough to get it some chai. But the person who's cooking the chai, very likely, is doing it for money, and not because he or she wants you to, have a great life and be more calm, and they just want 10 or 20 rupees. And the person who is cooking the food, they're probably also, cooking it and they're thinking, the boss is like this, and I have these problems, and what am I going to do next? And all of that is going into the food too.
Which is why it's great when your parents cook for you.
Yes.
That's the underlying logic as well.
That is the underlying logic as well. So we definitely want someone who has your interests at heart to be cooking for you. And I mean, I don't do a lot of cooking, but I personally prefer to eat. I eat very simply. I eat some fruit. I eat some vegetables. I have some milk or some curd, yogurt or something. But I like to just do that on my own, because in the food, then there's no complication from outside.
I'm a strong believer in the fact that prana can be achieved from the sun as well, if you know how to tap into that kind of energy. I've been reading a lot of work on this, even with Kriya Yoga, which is spoken about in Autobiography of a Yogi. They say that eventually, slightly controversial statement, they say that your body eventually reaches a point where you can harness the sun for an increased amount of prana through your soul.
Absolutely. And I mean, the person that I have known, and I say person advisedly, who was able to use this was Jatal Sadhu Brahmeshwar Das Ji, our Guru Maharaj, Vimalananda's, in the book Junior Guru Maharaj. And, as I mentioned before, he did eat tobacco, but he was also getting prana through the sun. And he used to occasionally let me massage his legs. And I was very privileged to do that, and I was very appreciative. And one day, I guess I applied a little too much oil, and he said, "Stop." And I thought, "Oh my God, what have I done now?" And of course, he was always paying attention to people's thoughts. And he said, "No, you didn't do anything wrong. But the thing is, if you apply too much oil, it makes it more difficult for me to get the sunlight down into my bones. And that's where you want your prana. Even the Taoists, the Chinese say this. The prana needs to be stored in your bones. So he was an individual, and he was a man who had been in samadhi for hundreds of years, but that's a different thing. He was an individual who knew how to bring the sunlight into his body, store it in his bones, and then he didn't need to eat food other than, a little bit of tobacco in order to just get some extra juice.
New clips released at the same time that a podcast releases. This is TRS Clips. Make sure you subscribe.